Before we begin, I want to take a moment to honor the cultures behind the stories we are about to explore. The tales shared here come from many peoples, lands, and traditions. I do not change these stories to fit modern expectations or to align with today's social standards. Instead, I present them as they were told, sometimes beautiful, sometimes harsh, sometimes challenging. We are not here to judge the past, but to understand it, to listen, to learn, and to honor the ancestors who carried these stories forward. We also share stories from various religious traditions. These are presented in their historical and spiritual context, with respect for their beliefs that they represent. Every culture deserves respect, context, and acknowledgement, and this space is dedicated to doing exactly that. Story 1. Oberon and Titania, the Enchantment of the Fairy Court. Within the literary and folkloric traditions of England, particularly as shaped by early modern interpretations of fairy lore, the figures of Oberon and Titania, the king and queen of the fairies, represent not only rulership over the unseen realm, but mastery over glamour, the art of illusion, enchantment, and altered perception. And while their most widely recognized portrayal appears in William Shakespeare's A Midsummer Night's Dream, these figures draw from much older European traditions in which fairy beings possess the ability to manipulate human senses, emotions, and reality itself, creating experiences that feel entirely real while concealing their true nature beneath beauty, desire, or confusion. In the narrative, a conflict arises between Oberon and Titania over a changeling child, leading Oberon to employ a magical substance derived from a flower known as love and idleness, which, when placed upon the eyes of a sleeping individual, causes them to fall in love with the first being they see upon waking, demonstrating a direct manipulation of perception and attachment. And Titania herself becomes subject to this enchantment, awakening to fall deeply in love with Bottom, a mortal man whose head has been transformed into that of a donkey. While absurd to an outside observer, is experienced by Titania as entirely genuine and compelling, but instead creates a convincing alternative perception that the affected individual fully believes. Throughout the story, multiple characters are influenced by similar enchantments, leading to confusion, misplaced affection, and emotional intensity that appears authentic to those experiencing it, reinforcing the idea that glamour operates not through overt deception, but through subtle alteration of awareness, shifting what is perceived as desirable, important, or real. The fairy realm, in this context, is not separate from the human world, interwoven with it, particularly in natural settings such as forests, which serve as liminal spaces where ordinary rules are suspended, and the influence of the unseen becomes more pronounced, allowing for interactions that would not occur under normal conditions. Importantly, the enchantments are eventually lifted, restoring clarity and returning individuals to their original perceptions, but not without consequence, as the experience itself leaves an imprint, suggesting that even temporary immersion in illusion can alter understanding of awareness. This story reflects a broader English and European folkloric theme that encounters with fairies often involve elements of enchantment, not immediately identifiable as such, and that beauty, attraction, and emotional intensity may serve as vehicles through which individuals are drawn into altered states of perception, where discernment is diminished and influence is increased. Oberon and Titania therefore represent not merely rulers of the hidden world, but embodiments of the principle that what is seen and felt cannot always be trusted at face value, and that the unseen has the capacity to shape experience through means that are subtle, persuasive, and deeply convincing, reinforcing the lesson that enchantment does not announce itself as illusion, but presents itself as truth, requiring awareness and discernment to navigate effectively. Story 2. Kitsune, the illusion of the fox spirit. Within the folklore of Japan, particularly in Shinto and later Buddhist-influenced traditions, the kitsune, or fox spirit, is one of the most well-known and complex beings associated with illusion, transformation, and the manipulation of perception. Understood not as a simple trickster, but as an entity capable of both wisdom and deception, existing within a realm that overlaps the human world while remaining governed by its own rules. And kitsune are often associated with inari, the kami of rice, fertility, and prosperity, serving either as messengers or independent spirits, depending on the narrative, and they are most recognized for their ability to shapeshift, frequently appearing in human form, often as beautiful women, which allow them to move undetected among people, forming relationships, influencing events, and creating situations that test the boundaries between reality and illusion. Many traditional stories describe encounters in which a person meets someone who appears entirely human, forming emotional or even romantic connections, only to later discover that the individual is in fact Kitsune, revealing that the illusion was not incomplete or fragile, but fully convincing, sustained over time, indistinguishable from ordinary experience until a specific detail, action, or moment exposes the truth, such as a reflection that reveals a fox's form, a shadow that does not align, or behavior that subtly contradicts human norms. In some narratives, the Kitsune act malevolently, offering protection, companionship, or guidance, particularly when aligned with Inari, while in others, the illusion is used to mislead, confuse, or test human awareness, demonstrating that the intention behind the glamour varies and cannot be assumed based solely on appearance or initial interaction. A common theme across these stories is that the illusion is not broken through force, but through recognition, often occurring when the human involved begins to question inconsistencies or notice details that do not fully align with reality, suggesting that awareness, rather than confrontation, is the mechanism through which clarity is restored. Additionally, kitsune are often said to grow more powerful with age, gaining additional tails, with the nine-tailed fox, or kyubi no Kitsune, representing the highest level of power and mastery over illusion, capable of creating entire environments or altering perception on a large scale, reinforcing the idea that illusion is not limited to small deceptions, but can encompass entire experiences. This reflects a broader understanding within Japanese folklore that the unseen world is not separate from human life, but actively interacts with it, influencing perception in ways that are not immediately detectable, and that what is experienced may not always correspond directly to what is real. The kitsune, therefore, serves as a representation of the principle that appearances can be intentionally constructed, that emotional responses can be shaped by what is perceived rather than what is true, and that discernment requires attention to subtle inconsistencies rather than reliance on surface-level impressions, reinforcing the lesson that glamour operates through immersion, creating a reality that feels complete and coherent until the moment it is seen clearly, at which point its structure becomes visible. Story 3, The Selkie Bride, the Skin That Conceals the Sea. Within the folklore of Scotland, particularly along the Orkney and Shetland Islands, the Selkies are understood as seal people who exist between the worlds of sea and land, possessing the ability to shed their seal skins and take on fully human form. And their stories are among the most enduring examples of enchantment through transformation, where beauty and presence conceal an essential truth that remains hidden beneath the surface. Selkies are not merely shapeshifters, but beings bound to their skins, which serve as the key to their true identity and freedom, without which they are unable to return to the sea, creating a vulnerability that is central to many traditional narratives, particularly those involving human interaction. One of the most well-known accounts describes a fisherman who, upon witnessing a group of seals come ashore and shed their skins to become women, secretly takes one of the skins and hides it, preventing one of the Selkie women from returning to the sea. And without her skin, she is forced to remain on land, eventually becoming his wife and bearing his children, living outwardly as a human woman when internally remaining connected to the sea, her true nature concealed but not erased. Throughout the story, she fulfills her role within the household, often described as kind, capable, and devoted. Yet there is an undercurrent of distance, a quiet awareness that she does not fully belong, and over time she searches for her hidden skin, sensing that her identity has been taken rather than willingly exchanged. Eventually, the skin is discovered, often by chance or through persistence, and upon reclaiming it, the Selkie does not hesitate, immediately returning to the sea, leaving behind her human life, including her children, not out of lack of care, but because her nature cannot be permanently altered or suppressed, reinforcing the idea that the enchantment was never complete, only sustained by concealment. This story reflects a deeper theme within Scottish folklore, that what appears to be stable or fully integrated may in fact be contingent upon hidden conditions, and that beauty, love, or familiarity can mask a truth that remains unchanged beneath the surface. When that truth is revealed, the illusion cannot continue. The Selkie narrative does not present the transformation as inherently deceptive on the part of the Selkie, but rather highlights the human act of imposing a condition that creates the illusion of permanence, suggesting that the glamour lies not in the Selkie form, but in the perception of the human who believes that what has been altered externally has been changed internally as well. This reinforces the broader folkloric understanding that enchantment often operates through concealment rather than fabrication, where something real is hidden rather than something false being created, and that the recognition of what lies beneath is what ultimately dissolves the illusion. The Selkie bride therefore serves as a representation of the principle that identity cannot be fully transformed through external means, and that attempts to hold on to something that belongs to another realm will inevitably fail once the underlying truth is revealed, demonstrating that glamour may create the appearance of stability, but it cannot override the essential nature of what it conceals. Story 4. The Apsaras, the Enchantment of Celestial Beauty. Within the mythological traditions of India, particularly in Hindu epics and Puranic literature, the Apsaras are celestial beings known for their extraordinary beauty, grace, and ability to influence perception and emotion. Often associated with water, dance, and divine courts, and they exist within a realm that intersects with both the earthly and heavenly worlds, moving between them as needed, not bound to a single plane of existence. And while they are frequently depicted as entertainers in the court of Indra, the king of the gods, their role extends far beyond performance, as they are often sent to interact with humans, particularly sages and ascetics, engaged in intense spiritual practice, where their presence serves as a test of discipline, awareness, and attachment. One of the most well-known narratives involves the sage, Vishwamitra, who through deep meditation and austerity has gained significant spiritual power, to the point that the gods themselves grew concerned about the potential consequences of his continued ascension. And in response, Indra sends the Aspara Menaka to disrupt his meditation, not through force or confrontation, but through presence, beauty, and subtle engagement. And Menaka appears near Vishwamitra's place of meditation, allowing her movements, voice, and form to draw his attention gradually, not as an abrupt interruption, but as a gentle shift in awareness. And over time, Vishwamitra becomes captivated, his focus redirected from inward discipline to outward experience, ultimately forming a relationship with Menaka that leads to the birth of a child, Shakuntala, before he later realizes the extent in which his meditation has been disrupted and the purpose behind Menaka's arrival. This story does not present Menaka as malicious, but as fulfilling a role within a larger structure, where her presence reveals the vulnerabilities within Vishwamitra's discipline, demonstrating that even advanced spiritual practice does not eliminate susceptibility to influence, particularly when that influence aligns with desire, beauty, or emotional connection. The Asparas are therefore not simply figures of attraction, but embodiments of the principle that perception can be altered through what appears desirable, and that enchantment often operates not by presenting something false, but by applying something that already holds appeal, making it more compelling and more difficult to disengage from. In many narratives, the presence of an Apsara marks a turning point, where an individual must confront the difference between temporary experience and sustained purpose, and whether they can maintain clarity in the presence of something that feels both real and desirable. This reflects a broader understanding within Hindu cosmology that the world contains layers of illusion, or maya, where appearances can obscure deeper truths, and that discernment requires not avoidance of experience, but awareness within it, recognizing when perception is being influenced in a way that shifts one away from their intended path. The Apsaras therefore represent a form of enchantment that is not inherently harmful, but powerful in its ability to redirect attention and intention, demonstrating that what is most convincing is not what is clearly false, but what feels aligned with desire, reinforcing the lesson that beauty and attraction can function as gateways into altered states of awareness, where the cost is not immediately visible, but becomes clear only in reflection.